to focus on now is I want to share a particular, it's not a strategy, it's actually a tool or a number of tools that you can use to really speed up the process of replacing your income. Right now, if you find a great property deal, you find one on Monday, and you put an offer and it gets accepted, it's going to take probably 3 months if you're lucky, probably 4, 5, maybe even 6 months to buy that property, just because it takes so long to get mortgages, lawyers are taking ages, you know, it's a slow process at the moment because of the way the market is. Even though there aren't that many buyers, it's just really, really slow. And that's going to slow you down if you want to hit that target. So there are certain things we can do, certain strategies we can use that can give us cash flow coming in much, much quicker. One of them I'm sure you know about is rent to rent, where you find someone who's got a property they don't really want, they're struggling to manage it, they're not making as much as they should from it, and they just don't want the hassle. You take it on and you enter into a contract and you get the right for 3 to 5 years to manage that property, and you manage it in a better way or a different way than the owner, and you make a margin on what you pay them and then what you can charge it out at, less any bills you pay. So a great strategy. The only problem with that is that you give the property back to the owner in 3 to 5 years. Now they might extend it, they might do a longer contract for you, but they might not. So a better strategy that I want to teach you about is the one where you can get cash flow and equity growth from a property without the need for a large deposit or even having to get a mortgage. And what that means is you can do it once you understand how to do it and you find the right people, you can do it very, very quickly. And once you find a suitable deal, instead of 3 or 4 months, you can get it done in 3 or 4 weeks. So if you were to use this strategy, this tool, between now and the end of the year, maybe you could achieve some of those impossible goals that Ben was talking about. Maybe you could replace your income. Who'd like to replace their income between now and the end of the year? Who'd like to do that? That'd be pretty cool. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, it's some tools called purchase lease options. And let me explain this to you. Now, I know some of you will know about this, some of our masterminds all heard about this, we've done our training on this, but let me explain how these work and why they're so relevant. Why am I doing it at this particular event? Back in 2008, when we had the last property market crash, when it was difficult to get finance, these were some of the only ways we could control and acquire property. So you could sometimes get finance, but it's really hard. This works really well. I believe there are going to be more people open to this kind of solution in the current market conditions. Now, one of the biggest blocks you're going to have when it comes to options is your mindset, your belief, what you think you know about this strategy. So I would encourage you to suspend anything you think you know or believe at the moment about this, and just have a really open mind in the next 2 sections where we're going through this, okay? So first of all, how can you use options? There's a page in your work, you might want to take a note of some of these. So let me ask some questions. I need some participation here. If you are renting right now, you don't actually have your own home yet, this is a way for you to get your foot on the property ladder. Or if you're living, you might have your own home somewhere, but actually you'd like to live in a bigger property in a better area, you can upgrade. So who in the room would be interested in upgrading where they live or even getting the foot on the ladder? Who'd like to do upgrade where they live? Okay, it's a handful of people. Okay, you can absolutely use this for that. You can also, by the way, those experienced investors in the room, you might have quite a few properties already. As I said, the first day, having been investing 28 years, I bought a number of properties over that time where I bought a property, and at the time, knowing what I knew at that time, it seemed like a good deal. And you don't know what you don't know. And actually, some of those properties, knowing what I know now, and with some hindsight, I probably wouldn't buy them again, even though they seemed like good deals at the time. And so a number of my properties, I've actually sold to other people for giving them the opportunity to come in and be what we call a tenant buyer, where they're a tenant, but they've got the right to buy this property in the future. We'll explain all this later. And it's been a great way for me to get rid of the hassle of that property, get the full market price, and actually still continue to rent it for a number of years, but make more than I'm renting it in a conventional way. So I've used this to get rid of some of the properties I don't want. We can also use it to find landlords who are tired or retiring. We can take on their property, similar to a rent-to-rent, get a great income from it, but also get the potential capital growth. Have you ever thought about buying a property, doing it up, and selling it on for a profit? Flipping property, who's ever thought about doing that? Yeah. Well, if you do that, you've got to find it, buy it, put a deposit in, get your mortgage, pay your stamp duty. How about instead of doing that, you kind of effectively joint venture with the owner. You put the money in, get it improved, and then you sell it, and then you actually make more money, and you've got to have a higher return on investment because you haven't had to use as much cash doing it. Then you haven't had to get a mortgage. You haven't had to pay that mortgage while you're doing the work. You haven't had to put a deposit in. You haven't had to pay stamp duty. So there are, whatever you're doing, whatever strategy you want to do, you can probably use lease options in conjunction with that strategy, but only in the right circumstances. So the big mistake I see people make when trying to do options, as well as their mindset, is they try and use them when they're not appropriate. So I want to share with you what they are and when you can use them. So it's another tool in your toolkit that you can use. So let's start with a purchase option, which is the most basic type of option, okay? So the first one, purchase option, this is where you find someone who's got a property they want to sell. So they don't want this property anymore, okay? And you enter into an agreement where you have the right to buy this property, but not the obligation to purchase. So if you don't want to buy it, you don't have to buy it. But if you do want to buy it, they have to sell to you. They cannot sell to anyone else. You have kind of exclusivity around this deal. Now, there's a certain time period. They're not going to give you that exclusivity forever. Certain time period called the option period, within which you have the right to buy this property if you want to buy it. Now, you fix the price. There's a price today. It's called the option price. So in the world of, this kind of works in stocks and shares as well, actually. They call it a strike price in the stock market. Option price, that's the price you agree. Now, it might be today's current value, might be slightly more, slightly less, but it's a price you fix today for a purchase at some time in the future. For this to be a legally binding contract, you've got to pay what's called a consideration. It's an upfront option fee. Now, it can be just £1. You might have heard the expression, who's heard the expression, buy a house for £1? Yeah, it's not strictly correct. You don't get to buy the house for £1. You get to control a property, which you buy for whatever option price you've agreed, but you get that right to control it for just £1. Now, by the way, the option fee could be a lot more. And sometimes, listen carefully here, sometimes people think, oh, if I can't get it for £1, I'm not doing the deal. And they're just missing the whole deal completely, right? It could be tens of thousands of pounds if it's a really good deal. And that upfront option fee could include things like maybe you cover their legal costs, maybe you pay for the estate agent if it's come through an estate agent. So that can be a number of things included in that upfront fee. And options must always be assignable. This is very, very important. So if you don't want to buy this property, you could assign it onto someone else, which means they can buy the property. And if there's a margin in between what it's worth now and what you have the right for, you can get paid a fee for passing these on to other people. So you always want to make contracts assignable. I've done the next type of option I'm going to tell you on where it wasn't. So I'll tell you that later, because the owner of the property specifically took that out of the contract, which I was okay with. But generally, you want the right to be able to pass it on to other people. Okay? I'll give you some examples to make this sense in a moment. Typically, this is used for land. So when you see big house builders and they develop this big area, they don't usually go and buy that land. They normally get an option on it, the right to buy it in the future. It might be a 25-year option. They call it a land bank. And then at the relevant time, they get planning permission. Then they buy the thing. Here's an important thing you need to understand. You don't need to own something to get planning permission on it. You don't need to own something to get planning permission. You can apply for planning permission. However, only the owner of the property can actually use that planning permission. So a mistake sometimes people make is say, right, I could develop this thing, I'm going to get planning permission, and then I'm going to come back and buy it. Because it will be a bit of a risk to buy something and then try and get planning, because you might not get the planning you want. So using options, purchase, you can de-risk when you're doing developments. This works very, very well in development. So you get an option, you secure the property with the option, get the planning permission in place, then you buy that property. And in fact, I think I gave you an example when I was talking to Mike Bristow at Crowd Property, one of our masterminders, Nick, who did exactly that. And he basically, he found a property, an office building on the market for sale, £415,000. He said to the owner, look, I'd like to buy it, I'll pay the full price, but I just need to get planning. So I'm going to spend money on planning. I need to make sure I can buy at this price. We've got an option agreed. He then got the planning in place. With the planning in place, it lifted the value of that property up to £560,000. He was then able to buy it for the 415, and Crowd Property lent him 400 of that money. So if you can add value to a property before you buy, and securing it on an option, that's a great way to use creative finance. Or Nick could have sold it on to someone else. He could have found someone else who might be prepared to pay, I don't know, 500 for that, worth 560. Someone else might be prepared to 500. He's got the option to buy at 415. So what that means is if it was sold for 500, the owner would get 415 and Nick would get the difference between the two, in this case 85,000. That's not bad, is it? Yeah? So these are some of the ways you can use them. And let me give you some examples. So what an option does, it gives you time. It's buying you time to do some of the things you might need to do. So if you want to secure a deal and sell it, if you're a deal sourcer, you want to sell deals to other people, really you want to use an option, a purchase option, to make sure you are locking out the competition and making sure you cannot get cut out from your deal, okay? Who's ever seen a property for sale that says cash only buyers? Who's ever seen that? Yeah, all of us, right? Why is a property listed as cash only, guys? Usually because it's unmortgageable, it's got a problem, yeah? So it's got a problem, which means you can't get a mortgage. Maybe it's got a structural issue, subsidence, so you can't get a mortgage. Maybe it's not habitable. Maybe it's got a short lease. For all these reasons, you can't get a mortgage right now. And it says cash buyer, and because you can't get a mortgage, you've got to be buying cash. There are less cash buyers than there are people who get mortgages, so generally the purchase price, the value of a cash-only purchase is often lower, right? So in a way that's good for us. The bad thing is, most people think you've got to buy cash. The agents think you've got to buy cash, the owners think you've got to buy cash, most investors think you've got to buy cash. And because there aren't that many cash buyers, most investors would be put off and not interested in this. But what you could do, basically, is you can go and find that property, you can secure that property, get the planning, get the whatever you need to do, get the problem fixed, then it's mortgageable, which increases the value, then you buy the property. That's the essence, right? You could use it to secure planning permission, as we said in this case here with Nick. You can use them in developments. You know, options actually come from the world of commercial property and development, okay? How many of you are interested in HMOs? Okay, so as you know, if you do an HMO, house of multiple occupation, in many areas there is an oversupply of HMOs. So I think I've said this before, if you do HMOs, you absolutely must be doing high-end co-living HMOs. They look amazing, you get a higher rent for them, you have a lower wait list. That's the only type of HMO you should be doing, because there is an oversupply of average HMOs, which is what most landlords do. Okay, so you definitely want to go high-end. Now, because there is an oversupply in many areas, local councils have been given the ability to apply something called Article 4. That's where the council has taken away permitted development rights. Because in normal areas, you can take a normal house, which is a C3 planning classification, and you can turn it into a C4, which is an HMO for up to 6 people without planning permission. That's in most areas. Unless the council has brought in Article 4, which means you have to get planning permission to turn a normal house into an HMO, okay? So a lot of investors think, oh, well, if it's an Article 4 area, I can't buy a house and convert because I won't get planning, because the whole point is the council doesn't want more of them. They will reject the planning application. However, if it meets the criteria, which is normally they don't want more than 20% HMOs within a certain radius of that property. If it meets those criteria, although you'll probably get rejected at first at planning, you can appeal and you should be able to get your planning permission, okay? But again, it would be a risk buying a house in an askable area, then applying for planning in case you don't get it. So instead what you could do is you could find a house in an Article 4 area which has got the potential to convert into an HMO. Most investors, guess what, won't be looking there because they think you need to get planning and think you can't get planning. Secure it on an option, get the planning in place, then once you've got the planning, increases the value, then you buy the property. So these are just some of the ways you can use lease options. And as I said, add value to something before you buy it. We've had people who've controlled a property on auction, they've got it renovated, and then they've gone to buy it, and because the value's been higher, again, they'll be able to use the higher value to actually purchase the property. Hey, it's Simon here. I do hope you've just enjoyed that video on YouTube. I hope you took lots of notes, and more importantly, you're going to take action. And what I'd encourage you to do is click on the link in the description below the video. I've got some live online training that's very relevant to the video you've just watched. Come and register for that training, join me live online, and you can actually get your questions answered live as part of that training. So take the opportunity to come and join me live online, click on the link below and secure your spot before you miss the date. Take action right now. As ever, I encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. Enjoy the next video.